President Lee Jae-myung departed Seoul this morning to visit Turkey and Mongolia. The highlight of his trip is his debut at the NATO summit in Ankara. Seoul seeks to strengthen defense ties and position itself as a key partner for the alliance. Samsung Electronics reported a preliminary operating profit of 89.4 trillion Korean won, or around $58 billion for the 3 months through June. That's more than double the company's operating profit for all of last year and surges past analyst estimates. Russia launched a major missile and drone attack on Ukraine, killing at least 22 people and injuring nearly 90 more. This came just hours after U.S. President Donald Trump claimed a resolution to the Ukraine war is getting closer than people realize. Hello and thanks for joining us on Arirang News. President Lee Jae-myung departed for a two-leg trip to Turkey and Mongolia this morning. In Ankara, he will make his NATO summit debut, with Seoul looking to position itself as an attractive defense partner for the alliance. Our Blue House correspondent Song Yoo-jin breaks down what to expect from Lee's 5-day trip.
Less than a month after attending the G7 summit, President Lee Jae-myung is heading to another major diplomatic stage, the NATO summit in Turkey. Korea, participating as an invited partner, is eyeing to deepen defense cooperation with the alliance. Together, NATO's 32 members account for more than half of global defense spending, making it the world's largest defense market.
As geopolitical uncertainty continues to grow, NATO allies are increasing defense spending and expanding their own defense production capabilities. As a NATO partner, Korea also needs to strengthen interoperability in line with NATO standards, so our defense products can be more readily supplied to allied countries.
A key highlight of Lee's visit will be the NATO Summit Defense Industry Forum on Tuesday. The event will bring together senior NATO officials, government representatives, and defense industry leaders. There, President Lee will deliver a keynote address and join a panel discussion.
Through the forum, we will directly showcase the strengths of our defense industry and its rapid production capabilities to NATO allies and partner countries, while securing concrete avenues of cooperation as we work toward becoming one of the world's top 4 defense exporters.
Beyond defense, Seoul hopes to broaden cooperation with NATO in areas ranging from security to the economy. As part of that effort, President Lee will hold talks with NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte on Tuesday. He will then join a meeting between NATO and its 4 Indo-Pacific partners, Korea, Japan, Australia, and New Zealand. Several bilateral meetings with fellow world leaders are also being arranged. After 2 days in Turkey, President Lee will travel to Mongolia for a 3-day state visit. He is scheduled to hold a summit with Mongolian President Ufnagin Huresu on Thursday. The trip will conclude with Lee attending the opening ceremony of Mongolia's historic Naadam Festival as a guest of honor, becoming the first Korean president to do so. Song Yoo-jin, Arirang News.
Korean tech giant Samsung Electronics has rewritten the history books with its preliminary second quarter earnings. The numbers are unprecedented for any tech company amid explosive demand for memory chips. Our Park Jun-an has the details.
Samsung Electronics has announced a record second quarter operating profit that goes beyond market expectations. According to a preliminary earnings report on Tuesday, the tech giant posted an operating profit of 89.4 trillion Korean won, or approximately $58.5 billion. To put this into perspective, the operating profit jumped an astonishing 1,810% from the same period last year. Revenue surged 129.3% year-over-year to reach 171 trillion won, or roughly $111.9 billion. In just that quarter, Samsung earned more than its combined operating profit for the 3 years spanning 2023 to 2025. No other global tech giant has ever reached this milestone in a single quarter, and the company's actual performance could have been even higher. The reported profit doesn't include around 17 trillion won, or approximately $11.1 billion allocated for employee performance bonuses. Without this provision, the second quarter operating profit would have surpassed the 100 trillion won mark. Samsung's massive earnings are being driven by an AI memory supercycle due to increased investment in AI infrastructure. The demand for advanced memory chips is heavily outstripping supply. As the company with the world's largest memory production capacity, Samsung is reaping the maximum benefits of this AI bottleneck. The firm's success is further solidified by its recent milestone of becoming the world's first to mass-produce and ship the 6th-generation HBM4 chips. Samsung said it plans to reinvest earnings into expanding its production bases in Korea. Industry watchers are taking a closer look at how the company's investments will translate into future profits and whether strong demand and pricing power for memory chips can be sustained. Park Junan, Arirang News.
Korea's benchmark KOSPI triggered the 16th sell-side sidecar of the year on Tuesday morning, driven by heavy foreign and institutional sell-offs. Program selling was halted for 5 minutes at 10:23 a.m., with the KOSPI 200 futures index down 5.12% or 66.26 points to 1,227.32. Foreign investors extended their selling streak to a 13th session, joining institutions to dump a combined 1.6 trillion Korean won, or roughly $1.1 billion. That briefly pushed the main index down to the 7,500 range. As of 11:30 a.m., Samsung Electronics was down over 8%, while SK hynix was down more than 7%. Canada has elected Germany's ThyssenKrupp Marine Systems as the preferred bidder for its multi-billion-dollar submarine procurement project. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney announced the decision on Monday before departing for the NATO summit in Ankara. The move ends hopes that the South Korean consortium led by Hanwha Ocean and HD Hyundai Heavy Industries would secure the lucrative contract. The project calls for the construction of up to 12 diesel-electric submarines under a program valued at as much as $39.1 billion, including long-term maintenance. However, Carney said that if negotiations with TKMS fail, Canada can still designate Hanwha Ocean as the preferred bidder, describing the South Korean consortium as the reserve supplier. Over in Ukraine, Russia launched a large-scale missile and drone attack on Kyiv, killing at least 22 people and exposing weaknesses in its air defenses. The strikes came shortly after U.S. President Donald Trump suggested a diplomatic resolution to the war may be near. Our Jung Il-im has the details.
Russia launched a massive missile and drone attack on Ukraine on Monday, killing at least 22 people and injuring nearly 90 others. Ukrainian authorities said Russia fired 351 drones and 68 missiles early Monday, with Kyiv and nearby areas hit the hardest. Just hours earlier, U.S. President Donald Trump claimed a diplomatic resolution between the warring nations was close.
I think we're getting much closer than people realize, and President Putin wants it to end. I will tell you that very strongly.
Although Ukraine said it intercepted many of the drones and cruise missiles, all 29 ballistic missiles launched by Russia reportedly struck their targets, leaving emergency workers to search the rubble in residential areas for survivors. The strikes also exposed critical gaps in Ukraine's air defenses.
We do not have enough means of defense, especially Patriot missiles. We have demonstrated to all our partners both the need for and, most importantly, the ability to provide greater protection.
Zelensky added that Ukraine could produce Patriot systems itself if Washington granted the necessary manufacturing licenses. Meanwhile, Ukraine carried out its own long-range drone strikes on Russia, with military officials saying the Omsk oil refinery in western Siberia was hit. The facility is Russia's largest oil refinery and accounts for about 12% of the country's refining capacity. Analysts say repeated Ukrainian strikes on Russian energy sites have contributed to fuel shortages and rationing in several regions. Jung Il-im, Arirang News.
In sports, U.S. President Donald Trump acknowledged calling FIFA President Gianni Infantino about a controversial red card issued to an American player. FIFA says its disciplinary process remains independent, but the incident has sparked calls for an ethics investigation and renewed scrutiny of the organization's political neutrality. Our Lee Seung-jae has more.
U.S. President Donald Trump says he called FIFA President Gianni Infantino to discuss the red card given to U.S. striker following Balogun during the World Cup Round of 32 match against Bosnia-Herzegovina.
So, yes, I asked for a review by FIFA. I spoke to a man who's highly respected, and by the way, whose level of respect has gone up tenfold. And he was good before this started, but you know, he really pushed it in this country. I'm the one that got them to do it.
Balogun, who has scored 3 goals in the tournament, was sent off after stepping on the ankle of Bosnia-Herzegovina defender Tariq Muharamovic. The red card carried an automatic 1-game suspension, which would have ruled him out of the round of 16 match against Belgium. But FIFA later suspended the red card, allowing Balogun to play. The decision sparked criticism, with some questioning whether Trump's call had influenced the process. Infantino responded to criticisms on Monday, saying FIFA's judicial bodies are independent and make decisions based on the FIFA disciplinary code and the facts of each case. He confirmed that he had received a call from Trump, but said he explained that the matter was part of an ongoing legal process and would be handled by the appropriate bodies. However, controversy has also drawn criticism from Fair Square, a human rights group focused on sports. Its co-founder Nicholas McGeehan told Reuters that FIFA has become too politically aligned, calling for an investigation into the issue.
We are definitely going to ask for an investigation into the circumstances of this. If there is a quid pro quo here at work, then that is a very clear violation of the Code of Ethics, and a quite serious violation of the Code of Ethics.
McGeehan says Trump's intervention should be investigated as a possible breach of FIFA's rules on political neutrality. 50 members of the European Parliament have also written to FIFA's Ethics Committee, backing a complaint against Infantino over his ties to Trump's political agenda. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
As Korea searches for ways to reverse its low birth rate, shared parenting is becoming an increasingly important part of the conversation. More fathers are stepping into primary caregiving roles, supported by expanding family-friendly policies. Our Shin So-won reports.
Walking towards the sink by the stacked dishes, Dad chooses to wear an apron instead of necktie and nice suit. He casually folds laundry between football highlights and sets the rice cooker, preparing daily chores. Now in Korea, a 31-year-old stay-at-home father like Jung Isak is stepping into the role of primary caregiver.
The biggest reason was my wife's career. I realized how important her work was to her, and I didn't want childcare to become the reason she had to stop.
Right on the schedule, he arrives at daycare every afternoon to pick up his 4-year-old son. Instead of heading straight home, the short drive turns into a conversation, taking his son on a new small adventure. For years, this was deemed a mother's duty, but he has never questioned the value of bonding with his son.
There's what's often called the planning side of parenting. Since my husband engages in active, energetic play every day, our son's physical development has been remarkable compared with other children his age.
According to Statistics Korea, the number of stay-at-home fathers reached a record 274,000 in the first quarter, up 16.6% from a year earlier. At the same time, the number of women staying home for childcare and housework fell to 6.536 million, the lowest first quarter level on record. As caregiving roles continue to evolve, the government is expanding family-friendly policies, including more flexible parental leave and greater support for fathers taking time off. Jung also takes a leading role in Korean Papas, an Instagram-based community for fathers. By gathering regularly for activities like hiking and water-related events, hands-on fathers share parenting experiences.
Good parenting isn't about perfection. It's about giving your child your time and making them feel loved.
For families like Jung's, parenting isn't about dividing responsibility equally, but rather embracing the different strength each parent brings to raising a child.
As Korea's birth rate shows early signs of recovery, father-led childcare is no longer the exception. The shift is redefining family life, moving beyond traditional gender roles. Shin So-eun, Arirang News.
This is the world now. In Sri Lanka, clashes between prison inmates have left 26 dead and around 100 injured. Clashes began on Sunday between convicted prisoners and those under temporary detention at the facility in Negombo, a coastal town about 35 kilometers north of Colombo. 2 inmates died and 38 were injured in the initial fighting. More violence on Monday morning then left 24 others dead, including 7 prison officials. Sri Lanka's justice minister said some weapons fell into the hands of prisoners during the disturbance. Hospital officials reported some of the injured sustained gunshot wounds. Police riot control squads and special forces were deployed to contain the violence. The justice minister says the situation is now under control. Cuba's power generation system shut down entirely on Monday in what was the 8th nationwide power failure since last October and the 3rd this calendar year. Power company UNE prioritized supply to hospitals and food facilities, but could restore just 1% of Havana's normal requirements by the afternoon. Years of neglect toward aging infrastructure combined with fuel restrictions have forced Cubans to endure prolonged blackouts spanning days. The Trump administration discontinued Venezuelan fuel deliveries to the island months ago and convinced Mexico to suspend its own shipments. 2/3 of residents had already lost electricity before Monday's complete collapse occurred. Residents described conditions as unbearable amid summer heat and surging mosquito populations. Microsoft announced on Monday that it will cut 4,800 workers from its payroll, roughly 2.1% of total staff, as the company reorganizes its gaming operations. The Xbox sector will absorb 3,200 of those departures, with layoffs beginning immediately for 1,600 employees on Monday. The company rejected suggestions that artificial intelligence would fill these roles. Despite years of investment in the gaming sector, Microsoft has failed to close the gap with competitors Sony and Nintendo. It is shifting course towards spreading its game portfolio across multiple distribution channels, rather than depending solely on exclusive console titles to drive hardware demand. A London judge will deliver a decision on Tuesday on whether the Daily Mail publisher engaged in unlawful information gathering against Prince Harry and several other British celebrities. The case centers on claims that dozens of stories that were published from the 1990s to 2011 were based on information obtained unlawfully via mobile phone message interception, telephone line monitoring, and fraudulent extraction of medical files. The Daily Mail leadership acknowledged minor regulatory violations, but insisted they terminated investigator relationships from 2007 forward. Chu Ji-han, Arirang News.
Morning monsoon rain has moved away, but now the attention will turn to heat and afternoon thunderstorms. Heat advisories remain in place for the southern parts of Gyeonggi-do province and Gyeongsang-do regions. Then there is a chance of heavy passing rain in most parts of Korea, with 5 to 60 millimeters in the forecast, along with thunderstorms. Conditions will remain hot and sticky across Korea. And this afternoon, Seoul will be getting up to 30 degrees Celsius, Gwangju at 32, but Daegu and Gyeongju will be topping out at 34 degrees Celsius. It's going to be quite muggy in Daegu with a heat advisory in place with that rain ahead. And looking ahead, the monsoon front will strengthen again tomorrow and Thursday. We are looking at more than 150 millimeters of rain across central Korea and over 120 millimeters in parts of the southern regions. So please beware of heat and rain hazards this week and stay safe.
That's all we have for today's noon edition of Arirang News. Thank you for watching. We'll be back at 5 p.m. Korea time. Stay tuned.